Welcome to today's show and tell of the New England Book Artists Group. Um, we've got three amazing artist members who are going to show their work today. Sharon Santillo, Chris Perry, and Christina Hajosi has volunteered to show some of her new work that's out there in the world. Because I haven't learned about any of you other than Christina, I can't really introduce you beyond that, beyond your names. But after you show us your work, I'm gonna know you, and I'm really excited. So we're gonna start with Sharon Santillo, and I'm gonna turn it right over to you. There's no reason for me to take up any more time.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here, but I want to make sure that everybody knows I'm not going to show you any fine art. I'm not going to show you any beautiful craftsmanship. I want to share the fun that I've been having with altered books, and especially during this pandemic time. Some on my own and some in collaboration with my family. But just to give you a brief introduction of my career, I've been an art teacher for many years. I'm retired from full-time teaching, but I still lead workshops helping people use art to tell their family stories. Now, my life in altered books got a big jump start several years back when I took a course with Catherine Ruffin. I don't know if she's a member of this organization, but it was the most fun. I audited her class at BU called The Art of the Book. It was the most fun time I think I've ever had in a course. And I was not her shining star as far as bookmaking, but I was way out there with making wacky books. And when she introduced altered books, I wanted to see how could I alter a book and also make it a family story. So she had all these books for us to choose from that she had rescued from the Wellesley dump. And I chose a book called Small Home Landscaping. And I thought, how can I make this about my family? And I decided that I'm gonna switch so you can see the book. I decided to make it little family stories about all the gardeners in my family, of which I am not one, but the gardening gene missed me, but a lot of my family members are wonderful gardeners. So when I looked at this book, it was a book from the 50s, and it was very preachy. And the two authors were so preachy, well-meaning preachy, but I made them garden pests right on the first page. So that's the original authors of the book. So I started out with, it was the first chapter, think before you plan. Well, my grandsons, all my grandkids love to make fairy houses. So that was the beginning of the book. I introduced fairy houses into the landscaping scene. And so these stories,
Mushrooms, yeah. Sorry.
these stories go on and on. I was remembering how when we were kids and the first frost came and we would get out our sleds and how we would tear up the lawn trying to sled on the frost on the little hill. So I just continued with family stories. My mother is a gardener, my uncle and his beautiful gardens. I love this a diagram of the shade trees and the shade at different times of day, different times of year. So I left in a lot of the original book, but I added a lot of my own little touches throughout. Stories about a beloved grandfather who was an avid gardener. My son taking his kids every spring to the Arnold Arboretum. Christmas, our Christmas tree was a very big deal in our house. So I put that on the coniferous page because Santa brought our tree. So it was very magical. And then it gets really preachy. Your garden needs shrubs. So I repeated some of these little phrases that I found in the book. So the stories go on and on with the gardening. and weaving in stories, favorite stories, Jack and Beanstalk, and my brother's garden, and my grandmother's garden. And then it gets to the end, a gallery of landscaping errors. So I got into this. I found a photo of Adam and Eve. This apple tree should never have been planted in this location. I started adding my own errors, and I found a reference. I made a little reference to the Candy Cottage in Hansel and Gretel. Don't landscape with candy. It attracts wicked witches and lost children. And the errors keep going on. Then grading and construction, I added my page. My go-to guy for grading and construction has always been Dr. Seuss. I love his impossible stairways. And then I end the book with a story about my sister and her garden and her greenhouse and her chickens. And my sister is tuned in today, so she's part of our group right now. So the pandemic came, and that gave a real jump start to my
How long did that particular completed book take you?
the one I
you
just
share
go through, the small landscaping. I probably did it in a couple weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, but I was very into it. I was working hard on it. So, okay, jump ahead now, pandemic. And I already had this book, a children's book about going to a museum, an old book. And I thought, I'm going to die in a pandemic, and my poor kids are going to be stuck with all my stuff. And they won't even know the stories of where all these things came from. So I started a book taking photographs and making collages of my stuff, my art collection. So I glued it into the book as if my little collection of art is part of a museum. So the lighting might not be the best on this, but I wrote the stories and I glued them in the book as little tip-ins. So you can see collages of all my treasures in my house and the little tip-ins to tell the stories of them. So that was lots of fun to do and very satisfying. And another
That satisfying is exactly what I was thinking before you said that.
Well, I'm sure these things will be donated to a thrift store, many of them, but that's okay. At least I've told the stories. So another collection I have, I've only spent one day ever in Mexico, but I love Mexican art. So I found a very tiny book, and this book is just for my little Mexican art collection. And I did a pull out of the story of these pieces too. And so that's in a very, very little teeny tiny altered book, the photographs of that collection. Okay, so now where's some books? It's the pandemic. I can't go to stores. There's no library sales. I need some books. So I found this one in a little free library. And it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I showed this to my grandson, my youngest grandson, and he said, we should make it monsters and bad guys. And he immediately started drawing. And his first drawing was the money monster. And I thought, he's only 5. How does he know about the money monster? I know this monster. I know what he's talking about. And then the next one he did was the road monster. And it just got to be tons of fun. And all my grandsons have added to the No More Mr. Nice Guy book. There's monsters, there's good guys, there's bad guys, there's aliens, there's all kinds of characters in here. And we also have, we love pull-outs and fold-outs and little envelope pockets. And I was able to end it with a quote from John Lewis. When you see something that's not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. you have to say something. You have to do something. And that's that's our whole philosophy of No More Mr. Nice Guy. We want to stand up for justice. So now my granddaughter wanted to get in on the act, and I found this, she loves dogs, and I found this little book of old book. The story wasn't much, but it had the very cute dog illustrations. So we left in all the little dogs. We didn't take any of them out, but she added some of her drawings, kind of made it a fashion book. And she added drawings, and we did cutouts. We have lots of hats in this book, and we have stickers, and we have pictures from magazines, but we left all these cute little dogs. So the next collaboration we did was a book of maps. My whole family loves maps. And we started seeing maps and all kinds of scraps of papers. And most of this was done on Zoom. I would show the kids a piece of paper, and they would decide what kind of map it was. So this was just a piece of crinkled brown paper, and they called it Windy Wetlands. And that became our first map. So the maps go on and on. And the younger kids have had everything was parks. Sunset Park with campsites and parking and hiking and pool and changing rooms. And then this was just a paper I'd used to clean my roller off, but they saw that as a view from an airplane. That was a map, and everything was maps. We were seeing maps everywhere. And Desert Park with the bike trail and river rafting. And then as the older kids, it got a little more dark. Like this map is a nuclear wasteland. This is the Chernobyl tour. There's metal dome, power plant, reactor sites, checkpoints, waterway, radioactive dust, exclusion zone, the green corridor. So it was so interesting what, depending on the age of the child, what they were seeing in these maps. And I'll show you the one in the back. They were adding their own little books of maps. So this is the mini museum of many maps. And so the whole family got into maps. Some of the books I choose just by the title. And this one was called Cannon Hill, and I named it Belmont Hill because that's where I lived, on Belmont Hill. And this one was the house of a. Well, I'm going to switch to so I can hold things up too.
I love the conceptualization stretch you did with your grandkids. What are the different, you were like younger and older, what are their age ranges? Just out of curiosity.
They are, right now they are 6 to 14.
Great.
This was a house of 1,000 lanterns, and I made it a house of 1,000 projects. So these just became art journals for me. Now, some of the books that I worked on with the family, I got at the dollar store. So they're not old books, but they're kind of at the end of their selling cycle once they get to the dollar store. So this book is called Out in the Open. And the irony of this is it was all done indoors. There was nothing done out in the open, but it was a nature theme book, and all the kids knew they could pick this book up anytime and add any pages to it. This one we've barely got started, but who could resist City of Ink? So we're planning to, we've done a little bit of pouring and splattering, and the kids are wanting to do a lot more in the City of Ink. They think that sounds great. And the whole family, adults and kids, this was an old architecture textbook from MIT, and it's too awesome, all these photographs we couldn't tear anything out of this book. It was too wonderful. So instead, we're using markers and whatever to decorate, to give these buildings holiday decoration. So the whole family's had a lot of fun passing around this book and decorating these grand buildings for the holidays. And this is the current book that we're working on that is tons of fun. This is an old home ec text from the 60s. If I had taken home ec, which would not have been a bad idea, if I had taken home ec, this might have been my textbook. So it homes with character, and we've added an S. So it's homes with characters. And one of our favorite things to do is to take a scrap of paper and glue it in and turn it into a character. So the whole family is getting involved in this one too. And I'll show you my very musical grandson just added this character to the book of characters. So that's my story. We have tons of plans, other books. Now that there's library sales and access to more books, we have a lot of plans of altered books, and it just fits into my lifestyle to recycle things. So that's why I love altered books. Thank you.
Wow.
I think these are amazing. And to have that rich experience with your family and sharing is extraordinary and brilliant.
What a great grandma, man.
What a
Awesome
great
grandma.
grandma.
You know, Jesus.
And
Yeah.
what a great mom. And
Totally.
will you adopt me?
Sure.
We need an art play date, by golly.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so
totally
ready.
charming. Totally charming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Incredible. Oh, Sharon, thank you for showing that. That idea is really, it just opens up to me a whole new concept for altered books that, well, it's just so charming and wonderful and intimate.
The collaborative nature of it, especially, not only within the family context, but I could see us doing it as a group as well. I've done a lot and I've taught quite often altered books, but I've never done a collaborative swap with anyone, or even just working on it in the same environment. I mean, at the same time, you could be you're doing it with them while they're there predominantly. Is that how it's going? Or did they do it on their own as well?
Yeah, during the pandemic, we were doing it more on Zoom.
Oh, okay. So everybody is separate.
We would sometimes get together in the garage or on the porch before vaccines. We would, but yeah, it's worked both ways.
Yeah, interesting. I love the collaborative concept. Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
So now we can move to Chris Perry. He's a new member, I think, of NEBA. Is that right, Chris?
Yep. Didn't even know about you guys.
How did you find out about us?
So hello to Marcia, Gail, and Annie. I had found out about NEBA through looking for New England artists for the show at Bridgeport. And I believe I have seven members in the show. And yesterday was the last day. Tomorrow we're packing it all up and moving it to Mark Twain Library. So in looking for things, looking for artists, I came across NEBA. I was looking all over the country. I am a member at Center for Book Arts in New York. And this was my second curated show. The first one was called Freed Formats, which was in 2019. I had done that with another book artist, Alice Walsh. It was a 3-year-long project of figuring out what to do, finding the 60-some artists that we had and the 137 pieces. We represented 17 states and 2 foreign countries. We went into 6 venues. It was quite a show. We still have a website, we have catalogs, we had a movie, so on and so forth. But
Can you
this is-
can you repeat the name of the show?
it was called Freed Formats, the Book Reconsidered. And so the website is freedformats.com. We're on YouTube with the Freed Formats movie, which is like an 8.5-minute movie that we produced at the very end when we were at 5 Points Gallery in Torrington. Someone had said, "Oh, you should film this." So in addition to all the other things that we did, we hired someone to do video clips, and then I produced a movie. So first off, this is the first time I've ever done a Zoom talk. It's a little weird. And normally I talk in person. And the second thing that's a little weird is the first time I'm talking about book art, my book art, to book artists. Usually I'm talking to
Interesting.
people who haven't got a clue about it. So I'm going to skip some of the stuff and just start off where I started off. Everybody knows what a flip book is. And I like flip books. People have given me flip books, but you know, like when you go to a movie, you see the whole movie and then you remember the movie. With a flip book, you have to actually manipulate the thing to see the movie. And I wanted something that you could just open the cover and see the entire movie complete. I taught myself bookbinding by using Keith Smith's Bookbinding for Book Artists, a real great resource, which I no longer have because I gave it away. But I started off doing signature binding, and this was a book. This is number 20. So this was 20 times I'd tried bookbinding before I got to this. And the idea is, you know, with a flip book is you flip the pages and the action moves. That little character or the little whatever you've drawn has moved across the page, but it's covered. With each successive page, you see a little movement. I wanted to see the whole thing, like I said. So this, if you can see that each page is cut.
Oh,
This is not. Are you getting this? Anyway,
yes.
Yeah.
so each page is cut. The books were meticulously planned because in signatures you have a certain number of pages, and you wanted it to start with nothing, and end with nothing. And if you didn't plan it right, it wouldn't come out that way. So I made a whole bunch of those. And then I started thinking, well, okay.
Can you
So
flip it for us so that we can see the action?
Well, it doesn't really flip so much as you can turn the pages and you can see.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That's
Okay, so
perfect.
what it is it's a triangle that moves
Mhm.
from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Two triangles.
Very cool.
And
Nice.
these were inked and drawn. Each page is drawn before it gets cut. They're collated, so on and so forth. But okay, it's a book. And someone said, well, gee, if someone offered you a gallery show, what would you do? It's like a forest of pedestals and books. And I started thinking, okay, well, how can I ramp this up to bigger? Well, okay, so it came out. Well, they're still sort of little. But again, it's, in this case, what happens on the inside is happening on the outside. And they are sort of flippable. And you can see things move.
Yeah.
But anyway, did about 65, 70 of these books. And
Those are all hand cut, are they not?
yes, they're all they're each page. Okay, so what I do is I cut, in this case, these were from tablets. Strathmore was making landscape tablets, 12 by 24 or 8 by 24. I'd cut them up, I'd tear out the tablets, fold the sheets, collate them, draw each sheet so I knew exactly where to cut because they were had to be very precise. After they were cut, then they were collated again and then sewn and bound and blah, blah, blah. But again, they're still only the size of a book. And I started doing things with the paper, asking the paper to do stuff. And I made a piece that had just a line of paper come out. And I was in the habit of not actually holding the book up until it was all done. And I thought, okay, this will be great. I'll have this book and it'll have the shape, the outlines. And I finished it, I stood it up and it flopped. And at first I was very disappointed in as much as the paper wasn't going to do what I wanted. I put it aside and made a couple more pieces. And I'm looking at it and going, maybe this is a good thing. Let the paper flop. The next bunch of pieces were getting bigger because I started adding. So you have a book like this where I've got paper coming out. Well, what if I made the paper even longer and put another book over here? So this was where the binding was for the second book. And then what if I split them apart into two and had a book over here and a book over there? That piece is in the Yale University collection. And it had 3 books in a triangle. And then I started thinking, well, what if I laid the book flat and had something come out and go into another book? And that piece is also at Yale. So I started figuring out how to use books simply as objects to make other things. None of my books have copy. There's no pictures, no words. The only time, a couple of times words have shown up, but only where I've gone into an existing book and cut a curve. Then you see the black lines of where the print is. I'm just going to turn this very slowly so you don't get seasick. This is my studio, and it's currently sort of empty because all the bases are at Bridgeport, aren't there? Now what you're seeing here are 2 pieces. What's on the ceiling is a study for a piece called Rainfall. And there's 10 books up there. You can see they start off with black covers, then blue covers, then sort of gray, and then white. And as they get lighter in color, these cut pieces get longer and longer. So these are 78 inches long. This is not easy for you to see.
It's perfect.
The
You're
little
doing
pieces
really
at
well.
the end are only 19.
What is the material?
It's all paper. It's all cut
I mean, what
paper.
kind of paper?
Okay, the really long stuff is from Hiromi. And
Okay, yeah.
it's the Japanese paper. I was shopping for something. I did not want rolled paper because rolled paper never flattens, no matter what you do to it.
Wow.
Hiromi sells this stuff. It's in sheets. It's 39 by 78. It's a soft, I don't even think it's cold press. It's so soft. And I buy these sheets and then I cut these. I'm going to do this again. Well, here. Show you a little piece. So these are little triangles.
Yeah, this will give us a better sense of scale. Yeah.
So this is only 19 inches.
Wow.
Most of the paper I use is by Legion. It's called Arturo Folio. It's 25 by 38. So this is a quarter sheet.
Yeah.
And by laying it down, taping down the sheet and taking a straight edge and doing this back and forth, I get a series of triangles, which I then do perfect binding at the end to glue them together. So the big sheets, same thing. They're 78 inches long. I just have an 8-foot straight edge. I do these long pieces, perfect bind them and stick them into holes I've cut into the books.
Yeah.
What you see behind it, the black books, I sometimes have to store stuff in my studio hanging because if I curl the paper, it takes the curl permanently. So what's behind is something called Groundwater. And that was a piece I made for a gallery in Waterbury. And when I first saw the gallery, there was a wall that was 18 feet, 21 feet high and 18 feet wide. And I thought, okay, I'm going to make something that covers the entire wall. And so it's 223 pieces, 23 books. And these black ones all have paper coming out of them. I have 4 boxes of black ones that don't have anything coming out. Groundwater is what you see when you drive along the highway. And especially in the winter when the water coming out of the ground is frozen, you get these icicles coming down. So the paper represents the icicles. All of my work is water-based. It all creates something that looks like water. Now, during the pandemic, I too lost my source of books. And I also lost my source of where to show stuff. All the galleries are closed. Source my books from libraries. People donate books to the libraries. They think every library wants all of your books. And in actuality, they don't want any of your books. And so I would go to book sales, and the Ridgefield Library and the Mark Twain Library would actually give me books that people have donated. So I had a pile of books, and libraries were closed and pandemic came, and here we are. So I started I had a whole pile of dictionaries. This is actually a dictionary, and it doesn't look like it, but it's in there. It's actually still heavy. And someone had said, why don't you make slipcases? So the dictionary is inside the slip box, and the slip box was then covered with a regular book cover. So inside that are, let's see, it's not great.
Yeah.
This one's called Sediment. And again, it's all based on water. This opens both sides. This was just at the Flynn Library in Greenwich, Flynn Gallery in Greenwich. Anyway.
So those are basically like book niches inside the text block of the dictionary.
Yeah, you take the dictionary, you cut a hole out of the middle, you glue that, make it solid. You glue the outside of the dictionary, then you make a new piece. Yeah, that's the red that you can just barely see. Okay, so these are all linen book threads, and so you see the red at the top there. Yeah, so that's a little frame that fits inside. Then all that slides into the slipcase, and it's all recovered. Yeah, and I source papers from all over the world.
What are the little teeny squares made out of? Those are they're really nice too.
They're basically just piles of book board, and then covered in the mulberry paper.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Hollander sells this great pre-waxed linen thread.
Yeah,
in colors.
They sure do.
Go through that like crazy. But at this point, I'm still making small pieces. I do studies for bigger pieces like the Rainfall. And Rainfall ultimately is a proposal that would have maybe as many as 1,000 books hanging from the ceiling. Wow. Something you could walk around, walk through if the ceiling is high enough. My website has a number of the big pieces on it.
Your chrisperry.com?
No, unfortunately, no. Chris Perry plays for the Cincinnati Bengals.
And he's also a guitar player too, isn't he?
Chris Perry. So
there's a bunch of Chris Perrys out there.
So what is your website?
csperry.net.
You can also see his member listing on the NEBA site if it's
that's
if you
live
can't find him just by a
link
general
there.
Google search.
And I'm not on any social media or anything. So
I'd like to know a little bit more about the water, the idea of ripples in the water, more like personally, like what exactly do you think is the fascination and going on here with the water? Exactly.
Well, so the Ripple series started off because, you know, when you do a signature, no matter how thin your paper is, at the gutter, you do have a pile of paper, and that causes the leading ends to do this in and out business.
Yeah.
And then the little shapes I was cutting, you could see this like pulsing as they got closer and farther apart, closer and farther. And to me, it looked like the ripples you see when you throw a rock into a still pond. Okay. I needed a title, but after about 60 some books, people would say, oh, I really like number 52. And I'd say, I have no idea what that looks like. It's just a number to me. So I had to start describing what they look like. Since I already had the ripple, it seemed like water was a logical step forward. Sometimes as I'm working, the title suggests itself. Sometimes I have a whole bunch of titles that are for books that are coming up. I'll design something that fits to the title, and then sometimes I have no idea what to call it. And weeks and weeks will go by, and I'll finally settle on something that sort of looks like it. Personally, it's just the title. I don't really like titles because people will look at it. You know, what's the first thing people do when they go in the museum? They look at the title card. Yeah. They're not looking at the painting. they want to know what it's called so they know how to start to react to it. I said, okay, fine, let's just do that. So when you look at something that like groundwater.
Do
it's
you
this big
think it
black
works
thing.
backwards though? Do you think it starts to impact you as well and how you're seeing them?
Oh,
as
of
well?
course, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I think
And
so,
just for
yeah.
fun, there's a website called Artist Title Generator. Let me see if I can get you the actual thing. It
Oh,
is
that's
hilarious. If you know it, it's fantastic. And you can get all these wacky titles and stuff that, you know, don't mean anything. Yeah, Art Title Generator is the website. And NOEMATA.net. It's some of the craziest things, but they make about as much sense as anything else. But I also use it as a way for me when someone says, oh, I really like what's at this gallery, and they give me a name, I know immediately which one it is, as opposed to trying to stumble around. Oh
Chris?
yeah, okay, I think I know which one that is.
Chris, I'd like to ask you something about the water, because it seems like at least the samples that you've shown to us all deal with water in its liquid state.
Mhm.
And I wonder if you've explored sort of vapor or ice or those kind of
I have.
iterations of water.
I have. I've done ice several times. I've done mist and pressure. I've done the effects of water on things like tsunami or overflow. And I'm always looking for other terms. I have websites for Icelandic terms, and I speak a little Italian, so I'm using some Italian terms. And you know, they say, oh, the Eskimos have 100 words for snow. Well, not really. They don't. They have 12. But Norwegians have, no, the Scottish have hundreds of words for rain.
Huh.
And so I'm starting to use some of those. And I've used a couple Japanese terms.
Yeah, I mean, you could
Just a way of-
also, it seems like it's endless, because what about tears or spit, or, I mean, you know, you could go crazy
yeah.
with it. I mean, there's,
Exactly.
I'm not suggesting that for you, but I'm just saying the idea of water really is
People are
Really
always
fun.
suggesting
huge.
words.
Yeah, it's
And
huge.
I'm always open to that. And that's fine.
So when we look at these numbers on your titles, that's exactly how many of these types of books you've actually made, right?
Yeah.
Okay, wow, okay. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm
like
up
you're
to- I'm
at
up
what,
to 200.
280 or something?
I'm working on 231 right now.
31.
But-
Very impressive, yeah.
But the thing to keep in mind is, for example, Groundwater had 223 books in it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
A
Okay,
big
I see
piece,
what you're saying.
Icicle, had 85 books in it. So
Wow.
since I started making books in 2009, I've probably bound about 1,200 books. I had one piece called Shaken Not Stirred. Someone was showing the little tiny books. Shaken Not Stirred, the books are postage stamp size. There's 70 of them, and they go into an ice bucket, and there's 2 martini glasses and tongs and a shaker, and they're all little white books.
That's very clever. I'd
And
love
it
to
was-
see
it was
pictures of
for a
that.
show
Is that
called
on your
Shake It Up.
website?
Excuse me? It's
I'd
not.
love to see a photo of that. Is it on your website?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's not very serious.
I like the full range of all of it. And that was one of the things that I forgot to mention during Sharon's presentation, is she started her presentation by saying it wasn't like high art or fancy binding. But I think that what NEBA is about, and what I as a teacher and an artist and a collector am about, is creativity and honesty and vulnerability and just putting it out there and really exploring. And I love it all. So
Yeah.
high, low, whatever it is, bring it on. It's all good.
Very cool.
Fantastic work.
Thank you.
Wow, Chris. Who knew?
Who knew?
Damn, this is wonderful. I actually think I've seen some of your work in the Yale. They had a number of years ago an exhibit about with altered books
No, the show they had was called The Book Under Pressure. It was the Alan Chasanoff collection. It was in January of 2000, well, January through May of 2015, I believe. And I have 3 pieces in the collection. 2 of them were shown at Yale as part of it. And then Art Space New England had a concurrent show where they had other pieces from the collection. And then they challenged 6 or 7 Connecticut book artists to produce pieces for that show. So yes, it's part of the permanent collection. I happen to know Doug Bube. He was the curator
Cool.
for Alan Chasanoff, who actually passed away last year, I believe.
Yeah.
And I was really fortunate to be selected for that collection.
Nice.
Well, it's just an honor to see your work and the extent and the engineering and the creativity together is it's startlingly beautiful. Thank you so much for
Very
taking
nice.
this time. Just I'm glad I can
Thank
see
you
your
for
face.
joining us.
Yeah, thanks
that?
for joining us. Exactly.
Oh, well,
Um,
so that was the second curated show, and who knows, there'll be others.
Great.
now,
We'll have a new source.
can you tell us where you live?
I live in Ridgefield. My wife and I moved here
New York?
6.5 years ago after 40 years in Lower Manhattan,
Is that New York or Connecticut?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
All
Just
right.
below Danbury.
Yeah.
We're like 3 or 4 minutes from New York State line.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
So,
Just beautiful. Well, thank you so much for
You're
taking
welcome.
the time today to share. Really interesting polls of creativity between Sharon and Chris. And now we're going to finish that triangle with Christina, who does her own things of beauty and creativity and wackadoodle stuff. So Christina, take
Wackadoodle
it
do.
away.
Wackadoodle do indeed. Yeah. I enjoy all kinds of explorations, and I started my artistic journey as a photographer. So today I'm going to do mainly a slide talk and show you at the very end a little bit of a work in progress that is in a similar vein. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started by sharing my screen. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, there's somebody to admit too. I guess we should have, we can delete some of this chatter, but Carolyn, let's try to remember to do the, not only tell people to mute when they're not presenting, but also to pay attention, because when I give somebody a hosting, they have to notice who's coming in. So like people that are visiting, dropping in.
Oh,
When you lose the host, I can't chime people in. So sometimes I think people are waiting.
that's a tough
Anyway.
That's a tough thing to remember when you're presenting.
Yeah,
Right.
it is. It is. It's a lot
I
to
don't
keep
know
in
why
your
I do
mind.
that.
But we're getting better at this all the time. We're still actually, pretty new at all this. Okay. I'm going to share screen and get my thing started. All right, so I'm Christina Hajosi, and I'm NEBA's president at the moment. And I am a book artist because of being a photographer mainly in my life at the beginning of my career. So I've been binding for 25 years roughly, of all kinds of binds, but predominantly binds that are good for holding photography or tipping in artworks of some sort. So those were the main structures that I learned initially, but over the years I've experimented a lot, and I'm just going to show you some of the most recent things I've done this year, and maybe since maybe October of last year through now. Some of this stuff is was just sold and some is in a show. And you're also going to be seeing the idea of what I think about NEBA and what its role is, in that I want to promote myself, obviously, as an artist within the group, but I also want to promote what I teach, the shows I do, the institutions I'm affiliated with, and to increase notions of friendship and art buddies and all that this can be for us as members of this group. And what it's been for me has been wonderful. So what you're looking at here are 3 pieces that I call art bound for good, and meaning it's some scraps that I finally got around to stitching together to make a book out of. But it was also bound for good in that they were donated to the Concord Art Association's holiday postcard 5x7 size thing that they did as a fundraiser, which I'm teaching there. I'm starting to teach there, and a lot of our members also occasionally teach there. They take classes there, and we're trying to increase our visibility. They have a wonderful gallery space as well. So getting involved in some of these projects on purpose with the intent of not only helping myself and doing good, I thought that these are definitely bound for good is the name of this series. And it combines, believe it or not, it combines scrap. These are just stuff out of scrap bins. So the notion of taking some of my paper marbling, some of my paste papers that I've made over the years, and basically making a pile of stuff in a creative way, stitching a very basically right straight through the middle of it, and working into it slightly. Not a whole lot of working in, a little bit of stitches here and there. Concord art, so I thought I'd incorporate some maps of Concord, Massachusetts as well. So we have a little bit of that. You're seeing just a whole lot of weird scraps that I put together, including these envelope shapes as well. And just really, trying to create something that would be a collaborative idea. So somebody is going to purchase this and they can use it either as is and fold it in half and create a little book, or they can actually work into it. So as a teacher, I'm encouraging them to work into it via the colophon and some little oddball additions here and there. Like here you're seeing into the envelope pocket that I've created, and it has a bead of double stick A2G tape, and you can fill it up with stuff. It says, "Fill me, seal me," which is the very little bit of text that I'm adding to this. Each of these pieces has that in some shape or form somewhere in it as well. Let's see. Here you're seeing more of what the colophon looks like, and it's tucked into one of the hiding little pockets. So they're very few pages, basically just straight sewn through with a chain stitch right down the middle. But you're engaging not only a viewer who thinks of it as a finished piece, but also potentially a student or another artist to collaborate with you. Yeah. So you're getting a real feel for the kind of work that I gravitate towards in my aesthetic. Seeing some more stitching, some more feminist body kind of feeling in some areas here, a little bit of weaving, which shows the impact of my relationship with both Carolyn Letvin and Anya Gilmore, our members, who I do a lot of art play dates with because of my affiliation here. So they're rubbing off a little bit on me here. Mixing different kinds of content that's like torn and ripped with formalized looking content is part of what I like. It's a mixture of the high and low. So you're just seeing different views of this set of 3 of these that I made, and they were bought. Carolyn bought 1 and a lovely lady bought 2. And I think she's gonna actually work into it. So she was excited. We had a good conversation at the opening reception.
And I'd like to mention here that Christina is going to do an art night at Concord Art.
Yeah, it's in here, honey.
We're going to
You're ahead of my slideshow.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
It's at the end of this little section. I will go faster. But here you're seeing scrap book cloth as well. Just tiny scraps, big scraps. When you really start to think of mixed media book arts, which I teach and am involved in on, like, from little kids all the way up to like Alzheimer's patients and elderly people, people react so amazingly well when you shift up the content, and putting broken window screen in the mix of like a scrap pack for somebody for a class just fries people's brains. And I love it. I love getting people to think in new ways. I love the reveal and the interaction that artist books can have. Even just 4 or 5 little pieces. These are 5 by 7 inches full out, and then you fold them in half. So these are very small and intimate and interactive, and I love the idea of this. So Concord decided, along with Carolyn's push, because she's, I think, the mistress of the art night there. She's not only our great MC for this, but she's, yeah, who knows? You know, talk about this idea of Academy Award winning. You never know. Carolyn could be something too. Concord's fantastic. They have a lot of great programs. They have a ton of great classes. Their exhibition spaces are fantastic. Just really good place. Even during COVID with restrictions and such, they've managed to persevere. They've got great online versions of all the in-person stuff that they do for the exhibiting. So I was thrilled to donate this for them. For $45 on March 24th, you can join us and have a glass or two of wine and some snacks and play with my crazy ass pile of fun stuff. I'm bringing a whole bunch of my weird bits and coaching people on some ideas. It should be a fun night for $45, and you'll get to hang with some of your art friends in a very controlled, you know, COVID safe environment. All right. So this is actually some pictures just briefly of here's Carolyn and hanging up stuff. And I wanted to show this because not only is that a fun shot of her like sneaking a peek over her mask at me, but it's an idea for us. I'm not suggesting that we do this exactly, but the notion of creating a small scale piece and having a fundraiser where we donate, you ask the membership to donate, as fundraising efforts is something that might be really nice. It was highly effective for Concord. They moved a ton of stuff in a very short amount of time by having small, petite, reasonably priced, everything, you know, the same size for handling, the same price for handling, just wonderful. I scored a really nice piece, and it was just a fun day. So here you're seeing my piece, and then right beneath my piece is Carolyn's sheep. Tell us about your piece, Carolyn.
My piece is just a monotype that I did with my palm press very quickly, and I did it to the 5 by 7 size. It was made for the postcard show.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do things specifically to do this because they do something like this more or less every year. So artists get in the habit of like saving something cool as a way to donate. We are a volunteer organization, and it hurts less to give us a weird ass print that you decided you weren't in love with, or a little miniature book or some kind of crazy thing than to donate money. So yes, we are fundraising and mentioning volunteerism at every meeting. Sorry, I have to be presidential for a second. The other reason why this slide's in my slideshow is dig that chicken dancing creature and right next to where Carolyn's hand is. Love, love, love. I should have bought that one, but I didn't buy that one. I bought something different. I saw another one I had to have that more, but Julia Talcott, she's amazing. But look at that chicken dancing thing. I love that. Yeah, so
I could have bought 25 pieces and they're $40 a piece. It's a flat $40 no matter for each one of those little pieces of art.
Yeah, there's some that are kind of like, huh, you know, but there were so many that were just like off the charts for $40, like way cool. Okay. Sorry for the abrupt transition on that one. It was like, whoa, weird chicken sculpture. Yeah, so the 3 pieces that I want to focus on now briefly, and also another happens to be another event that Carolyn is also at. So we're going to show a little bit of her work too. Attleboro Art Museum, which is a super charming, very well run, lovely little spot down in Attleboro. And they have really interesting shows. They do great for their members, and their member show usually has some pretty quality work in it. I have 3 book arts that I'm just made. I mean, brand hot off the press. So I'm just going to do a couple of installation views as we cruise along. You can see off in the distance kind of some of the other work. There's a whole lot of work from basically all the members here. So the piece that's sitting on the pedestal in the foreground is part of a series of work that I've started on reflecting on family memories of a lot of these family members that have passed recently. This particular piece is about my dad. It's called Struggles of Will. You'll see more details of that in just a minute. Another piece of mine is this piece in the foreground called the Three Twins. 3 large scroll books that tightly wind up into a cigar-like shape and go into this gigantic like cigar holder here with an antique vintage kind of cigar label called the Three Twins. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then off in the distance here, you'll see on the cyanotype series on the pedestal in the middle there. It's called Party Out of Bounds. We'll start with that one. Basically reflecting on my life, not just as like family pictures. I started initially with family pictures, looking directly at them and thinking somehow I would incorporate old photos with artworks that were made in a similar time period and kind of reactive, because a lot of my art has been about negative body image and bad relationships with my parents predominantly, but some with my siblings. So it's family narratives that haven't really been so nice. And I always tried to somehow transform these feelings I had into something more positive. And I was very feminist and very political. I went to William and Mary before I decided to become an artist and come to Boston. But I definitely knew that body image and body art was going to be sort of proxy. I was to be using things as proxies for my own personal struggle and some of my feelings. So right away in photography school, I learned how to do cyanotyping. This is in 1992 to 1997, this particular series. I was furious about all the Greco-Roman sculpture over the Museum of Fine Art that I was looking at. That was all like the dudes were all athletic and, you know, these decathlon poses and strong and powerful and dominant. And the ladies were all submissive and passive and like hiding, you know, semi-hiding their business from people and all shy and coy or, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I thought Body Blueprints is the name of this series would be a good project for me to kind of put women in more dominant posing and have them lunging and throwing and twisting and more dynamic as well. And when you make a cyanotype 8x10 negative, this was not just printing on acetate. This was actually enlarging negatives from 35 millimeter to a 4x5. So if you follow the line, it's it goes positive, negative, positive. You know, to go from 35 millimeter up to 4x5 inches, then that goes up to 8x10 or larger, and you're actually making a negative to print. So you have this 4x5 inch positive as an interim step. So when I found this big box of cyanotypes from way back when I was feeling angry, not only about politics, I'm a big conceptualized person. I conceptualize everything all the time, and I'm kind of obsessed with how color and textures and things can steer people, and how simple wording, when I think back what Chris was talking about, the idea of the titles, it's the way my brain works is in a whole lot of layers. So this particular piece, I saw the craziness of the backside of this marbled paper as a struggle of politics, a political struggle with reds and blues. I just felt it from that. And then the cyanotypes are also in my head. And yes, I do work a lot to the talking heads and Party Out of Bounds as a music, as a song, and as a lyric in a song, and just binding and bookbinding and bondage binds. And it just kind of, I know that it's weird, but it became an amalgam for a whole lot of different ideas and frustrations in me. And I looked at this piece and I did every other image from positives as at the 8x10. Let me just go forward here so you see some other angles of view. It starts off with stitching and the hairs like coming out of her mouth potentially, or down her body from it actually being like legitimately hair, to it being more of an accessory that's pinching her waist and actually really kind of seriously pinching her waist, to her being basically in a dog collar kind of concept. So it gets like more and more aggressive, but it's the negative images that are the ones that are being manipulated. So it's like a struggle of kind of similar to the struggle of Will's idea in a piece that I'm going to get to in a minute. But it's a big conceptual jump, but mainly I thought it's a beautiful depiction of pretty aggressive thought, which is what overall I'm trying to learn how to do. I have a lot of aggression towards family and the politics and Trump and all this different stuff. There's a lot of anger in me. And I find that I deal better with these ideas of release and grief. And it's a visual release. It's a conceptual release. There's, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain.
It's
But,
called personal. It's
yeah.
personal.
Yeah. So here you're seeing the colophon is a separate cyanotype that I've cut on a weird angle and then erratically kind of made a accordion fold with her and then stitched it coming out of her mouth more obviously. Or it could be, you know, I do have a lot of references to that little weird random hair that starts to happen. I'm 54 and there's a frustration. I've done a lot of visual stuff with hair, chin hair, which I know is, you know, you can't write this stuff in a colophon or an artist statement and truly make people understand, but I don't want to. I want to just put it out there. So the colophon doesn't have a whole lot of references. I usually make colophons out of scrap. So we've got a little leftover piece. I've made like a little slip cover and this whole thing slides in there. And the backside of her has the writing, which gives the actual colophon information. So it's very like, it's a unique item made of these different types of objects with the measurements. It's not here is Christina explaining that this is political as well as sexual and social. There's a whole, you know, it's about positives and negatives of a range of things. And I'm not assessing who is like, which is the Democrat and Republican. I'm not, you know, it's much more conceptualized for me. And I just think visually it worked. And I love the box. The box again is scrap stuff working in with cyanotype scrap and the book cloth scrap from the red on the bind of the book. And it's got a recessed square and it's a really nice, you know, I'm proud of this little sucker. This box was pretty complicated. Yeah, and here's the glamour shot. Oh yeah, we get the glamour shot. Yeah, so it helps when you're your own, you know. I just take enough pictures till, you know, and I keep looking at it till I get the one that works with the right hair toss and the right fill flash. Yeah, excellent, baby. So here is struggle of wills. Now, some people have looked at this in different levels of work. Struggle of wills is a bunch of accordions down the center connected with accordions coming off of it. Basically, the pictures you're going to see are going to kind of turn around it. It's a bunch of two-sided marbled cardstocks. So both sides are marbled in the same session, but like all kinds of crazy different patternation, even the color palettes are similar. So it's a real struggle, which marbling is, a literal chemical struggle on the surface of liquids, of the colors pushing and shoving, and you can blow things and you can push them yourself. And the conceptual potential of just marbling in and of itself is a struggle and wonderful and interesting. but I like to put it onto other ideas. So basically the struggle of the wills is a struggle of man versus animal, parent versus child, and literally inheritance wills, like a will, like a legal document. My dad died and really screwed us with a blind trust and all this like really kind of uncomfortable feelings in our family. So I wanted to combine his bad parenting, which I have the last piece I'm going to share also deals with a little bit of that too. You know, I want to really, you know, have my Tawanda moment of ramming my car into his, but, you know, he's gone and that never really happened. So I guess maybe I'm working some of my anger at my father out, and I'm doing it in a beautiful yet raw and kind of scary way. I don't usually hand write into work, and my work is usually very tidy, as you saw in the first piece I shared. So this has handwriting and sometimes stitching over it, where I'm using black linen binding threads to stitch as drawing and as text, because stories are told over and over again and become different. So sometimes they don't line up exactly. So you're seeing a whole lot of threading. It has a box, and this is how they presented with the little box on the side. I thought that was kind of nice. But again, you're seeing the weaving ideas that I've been getting off of interactions with NEBA members and good buddies now that I'm enjoying. We're definitely impacting each other's work in different ways, I think, which is nice to see. You know, it's part of the way you stretch and grow. Here you're seeing marbling on top of some ledger sheets as well. The stories and the writing are about 3 specific stories of my dad being abusive with animals, abusive with his kids. It's not only a struggling, you know, of just men and parents. It's really, these are mainly really kind of erratically written poetry-esque like writings of stories about my dad punching a horse in the face, forcing us to almost die from a height that was absurd, to look at little baby owls in a nest, and his dogs, his treatment of the dogs he had prior to moving to a housing, a big fancy, like, you know, housing place that had restrictions on the size of your dogs, only dogs under a certain weight, you know. And so he basically put down 3 dogs that were too big before he went to that retirement community, that instead of just giving them away, which I always thought was, you know, the sign of, for me growing up was always like, how do you treat an animal was somehow reflective of who you were, your sense of humanity, I guess. I don't know, but so this is a struggle over inheritance, respect, and like actually literally might going on in some of these stories. So it was pretty painful to write, and yeah. It's got body again. There's body related imagery that you could think of. You're starting to see like the conceptual, you know, shock, like seeing like things which you always do, like you do in sky and the cloud formations and such. You want to anthropomorphize things. I mean, it's there. You can't help it but see it. It's a lot about typography, because land disputes and bloodlines and what you got from somebody else. It's about missing content. Like, where did the rest of the like ledger information go? Missing assets, you know? Yeah.
This harkens back to Sharon's maps.
Yes, and I was going to say that too, because the
really
next one definitely had typography, and maps are definitely part of here you really see the stitching over the top of the text clearly. Sometimes I haven't had a chance to do like a studio shoot of this yet. Yeah, but it's definitely got biology in it. Just real quick, the third one is the one that I think really speaks to maps the most, and I don't have a whole lot of photography of it. And like I said, I was playing on visual notions of cigars, based initially because of the way that the cigar label came across to me. The story behind it is my twin sisters, who were totally sociopathic and destructive to our entire family, were a year and 4 months older than me. They were preemies. So it was like we were triplets, because I wasn't that much younger, you know? So I was normal and they were small, and it kind of made us be the same. And they were trouble. They were trouble their whole lives. And my dad lumped us together in his mind somehow. It became you girls, the Hajosi girls. It wasn't, and I was so different than they were. Talk about morals and, like, you know, anyway, they led a very different life than I did, that kind of life that I would never have wanted to choose, sexually and party wise, and the whole, like, you know, crazy car situations, and, you know, just like, you know, hell on wheels. But anyway, so being the three twins has been the bane of my life. It just, you know, when I'm in Rome, Georgia, in my hometown, people are like, oh, you're one of the Hajosi girls. And they have this preconceived idea of who I am. And it's something that I'm absolutely not. And I've really fought against that. And it's like a big fat stinky cigar that you just can't get out of your nose. You know, that smell that imperviates your clothes, and if you're near somebody that's smoking a cigar. And then just the idea of the layers and tightness of how a cigar is wrapped, mixed with a whole lot of weird feelings about bloodlines and being the same but being different. So these are three scrolls that are very similar, all three printed in the same pull off a 40 by 40 inch vat. So they're really long. They're almost 80 inches because it's prints that got cut in half and then stitched together in the middle. So there's like this life shift kind of going on. To me, they speak also of kintsugi, which is that Japanese art of golden repair, where you're fixing a crack with silver or gold or platinum. I don't know. This piece may be like the weirdest amalgam of things that I think I've done today. So it's kind of strange being the cigar reference. Yeah, but it does feel like mapping to me as well. So anyway, okay. Wow. Okay. I think I'm there.
Very good. Oh, Christina, the depth of your thought is really brilliant. And it hanging out with you has been a real intellectual challenge for me, because because I barely have an intellectual presence. Anyway.
Since you are talking, let's do the final here before we go.
Well, and I wanted to, so here I
Oh, here is Carolyn's wall at the gallery, in the gallery space.
And I wanted to make sure that you know that Margot Lemure is also in the show. She has messaged me, and she is in the show as well. So
I took large views all the way around, but I didn't get a single picture of her. I'm sorry.